So I'm here by invitation from Whitney. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak at this, the Business Leaders Forum. Is that what this is called? And so I assume you all want to be business leaders. Is that right? Otherwise, why are you here? Believe it or not, every single one of you will be involved in business in one form or another. Either as an owner of a business, an employee of a business, or a customer of a business. Just about everything revolves around business in one form or another. And so if you're trying to be a leader within business, let me suggest some characteristics. This comes from a little booklet I picked up along the way. How many of you would like to, by the way, if any of you have any questions about anything as we get started, as we go through this, by all means ask your question. Okay, I may not have all the answers, but maybe somebody else will. Okay, so if you're considering becoming a business leader or maybe a business owner, here are some qualities that you might want to develop. Consider your education or work experience in your chosen industry. My wife and I, over the course of 14 years, had 9 children. We figured it out eventually, but what I told our kids growing up was this: decide what you enjoy doing. Figure out what you like to do, no matter what it is. Go get some education in that area, and then work in that area. You might as well get paid for doing something you like doing. So education is the first step. So that's number one on the list of considerations if you want to become a business owner or business leader, is your education. Next, and I'm just going to read these. You can think about them and ask questions about them, contribute comments. A strong work ethic. Do you work hard? Or do you look for ways to set it aside and go play? Effective time management skills. How are you at that? You're able to organize your time, set a schedule, follow the schedule, get it done. Ability to multitask. Sometimes I think that's overrated. I'm not sure anybody really multitasks, because if you want to get something done, you better focus on it and not allow yourself to be distracted. I just read an article this morning, as a matter of fact, about adult ADD. It's the inability to focus, concentrate. Anyway, ability to multitask. Management skills. Management skills of projects, people, customers, whatever the case might be. How do you do at managing, supervising? Willing to ask for help and advice from others. Sometimes that can be a hard thing. You know, it reveals your weakness potentially, but it's essential to ask for help if you need it. Are you self-motivated? What does that mean? Anybody? Drive from within as opposed to external motivators? To change course if necessary? All right, that's a good one, really good one. Anybody else? Okay, how about resourceful? Are you resourceful? Can you find, as suggested here, solutions that aren't necessarily obvious? responsible. That kind of goes along with self-motivated. Organized. How organized are you? See, all of these are qualities that are desirable for success in the business world, especially if you seek to lead. Persistent. You know, I learned when I went to law school, after 5 years in the Army, I got out as a captain at the tail end of Vietnam and decided to go back to law school. And I was a little worried about that until I realized that it really doesn't take a lot of brilliance. It really only takes persistence. You know, you got to jump through some hoops to get in, of course, to graduate school, professional school. But once you're there, it's really mostly about persistence. You just dig in and you make it happen. You don't have to be particularly brilliant. We can talk some more about that, but persistence is essential. Decisive. Can you make a decision and go for it? Good health. Can you stand up under the rigors of leadership? There's been a lot of books written about leadership, and it is demanding, extremely demanding. So, are you in good enough health to do it? Emotionally, physically, even spiritually. And how about a supportive family? The people closest to you, do they support you in your endeavor? Or are they, you know, skeptical? It's okay to have some skepticism, but don't let it undermine you. Any questions about any of these qualities or characteristics? Do they seem to ring true? I'm sure all of you have had some experience with them. Any comments? Well, I'm going to, I understand you have to have 2 quotes. Is that right? You got to have 2 quotes from this little presentation? Well, I'm going to give them to you right now. Here's one. And they're just phrases, really, kind of. Thank you. What does that mean to you? Why are you a business student? You know, we just celebrated Labor Day. We celebrated Labor Day by taking a day off work, right? There you go. But have you ever thought about why we do that? Why a whole nation sets aside a day to honor labor? What's it mean? Okay. The freedom to achieve. And that is why people are flocking to this country from all over the world. They'll get in here any way they can. We're not going to get into that politically, but that's why, a lot of them. They see what's available. Okay, the other phrase or other quote is, you've heard this before. I don't like the way that looks, though. Okay. Just do it. Identify what you want to do and go after it. Now you're going to hear a couple of words that I say over and over again in the next few minutes, as I maybe just share a little bit of my own experience. But as we go through this, you'll identify those 2 words. back at the beginning, kind of where many of you are at this stage, I decided that I was going to graduate from high school. Neither of my parents graduated from high school. For whatever reason. My father had joined the National Guard just before World War II, and when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, he was activated. Pulled out of high school before he graduated and sent to the South Pacific. He was in Pearl Harbor 2 weeks after the bombing as a kid, 18 years old, whatever. Spent the next several years in war. My mother was pulled out of high school when their family moved, didn't finish. So, long story short, I decided I was going to finish high school. While in high school, I saw, had all kinds of experiences just like you have. I decided I was going to go to college, that I would build on that foundation. While in college, I decided, is it becoming apparent now? It kind of goes along with this word. I decided to take time off of college and perform some humanitarian service for a couple of years. An invaluable experience. Came back from that and didn't really know what I wanted to do, but eventually I decided to major in political science. And while taking a political science course in constitutional law, I decided I wanted to go to law school. What's the two words I keep using? What?
I decided.
That's it. It's simply a matter of deciding to do it. Okay? And backing it up so many steps to make it happen. So, to continue the story, I decided when I wanted to go to law school, Uncle Sam had different plans. Vietnam was still raging. I ran out of college deferments, and so that was the first year of the lottery, the draft lottery. Anybody in here know anything about that? Do you, sir?
Yes. I had a nice land number 366.
The way the lottery worked, by the way, is they would put all the birthdays, 365 days of the year, in a hat and draw out those birthdays. And if your birthday happened to come early in the process, you had a very high chance of going into the military. If a high number, a high draw, 300 and something, slim chance. Okay, so it was strictly per chance, strictly a lottery system. Well, I had, I think my number was 90. So I thought, here I come. So I enlisted in order to get some options, went into the Army, and spent the next 5 years of my life in the Army. I thought for sure I was going to Vietnam, but I actually got sent to Central America instead and spent the next 3 years in Special Forces. An invaluable experience, absolutely invaluable. But I decided to get out of the military because I still wanted to be a lawyer. And so I went back to law school and became a lawyer. Now, any questions so far? The lesson from that, by the way, is there will be interruptions. There will be distractions. There'll be disappointments. There'll be setbacks. But if you have decided what you want to do and persist, it will happen. All right? So a lot of people were telling me, stay in the Army, it's a good deal. as I was about to go in, the recruiter called me one day and he says, "You're a college graduate, right?" "Yes." "How'd you like to go to OCS?" "Sure." "Does it pay more?" I'm on. So I went to infantry OCS, et cetera, et cetera. So I was a captain when I got out. And a lot of people were saying, "Man, you got it good, stay in." I was an A-team leader. Anybody know anything about Special Forces, by the way? You do, you were in the Navy.
One of my big friends is a Navy SEAL, actually retired.
Yeah. Well, it's a tough gig, but invaluable. So everybody was trying to persuade me, you stay in, here you are, you got it made, you got all these benefits, you got all this experience, you're working with the elite of the world. But I said, nope. Even my own father said, who was an Air Force retiree, said, you should stay in. No, thank you. I was determined to become a lawyer. So that's what I did. And everybody has to make those decisions. For some of you, maybe it would have been a better deal to have stayed in the military if that was your course. And so you face these crossroads all along the way. And it becomes important, how bad do you really want to achieve whatever it is you set your mind to. So, went to law school, started working for a law firm after my first year, stayed on with that law firm after graduation for another year, and then the senior partner took a judgeship downtown, sold the business, the practice, to one of the other attorneys. So here I am now working for him. So I go to him and I say, okay, is there any chance of my buying into the business? Notice I'm using business in reference to a law practice, because that's exactly what it is. Any chance of my buying into the business? Nope. Well, I wasn't going to be an employee after all this, after everything I'd been through. I wasn't going to remain an employee forever. So to myself, I said, okay, thank you very much. By that time, I'd worked for that firm for 3 years. I sent letters to all of the people that I'd had any contact with. All of the clients, all of the other lawyers, doctors, everybody that I'd had any contact with, I sent letters to, and I said, I'm going out on my own. I'd be happy to continue to serve you if you're interested. So I decided to leave that good-paying job and go out on my own. I looked at my wife and our 6 kids by that time, and I said, are we sure about this? Is this still our dream? To be in business for ourselves and have our own law firm and so on? Yeah, let's do it. We can do this. So there again, remember one of the qualities I mentioned? What was it? A supportive family. She said, yeah, we've been through all this. We can do this. So that was our dream, and we went out. And within the first 2 days, I collected as much as I would have been paid in 2 weeks working for the other firm. So it was a pretty good decision, and we never looked back. So 32 plus years later, I was able to hang up my stirrups and do something else. So there were some setbacks and some disappointments along the way. I was talking to the senior partner before he became a judge about buying into the business. He up and just sold it to the other guy. Didn't say a word to me. I could have gone any number of routes at that point. So once the other guy told me I had no hope of ever, becoming a partner in the firm or anything, the writing was on the wall. So we just did it. Went out on our own and borrowed a little money from my father-in-law, and off we went. So we did occasionally. We eventually crossed paths, of course, but It was friendly. I mean, he didn't like the fact that I left, and I took a whole truckload of clients with me, but there was nothing he could do about it. It was no, but of course I wasn't interested by that time. So, but that's a good question. Yeah, no, we didn't part necessarily friends, but there wasn't bloodletting over it. But yeah. I don't think, from my own perspective, that he flourished much. I mean, he kind of flew under the radar. But, you got to be fair with people. I had given my soul to that firm for 3+ years and was treated like that by both the senior partner and this other guy. No, this isn't going to work. So. I did personal injury work. When I was in law school, I took a tort class. That's what torts are, by the way. A tort is something that someone does that causes injury to someone else, right? So I took a tort class in law school, and I thought, God, the people that do that are like parasites. Somebody gets hurt, they're in bad shape, and along comes a lawyer and says, "Oh, let me help you out." They call us ambulance chasers. Yeah. They call us all kinds of things: sharks, ambulance chasers, bloodsuckers. And yet, the reason I did it, the reason I gravitated over into that area of the law, was because I had countless people come to me over the years and say, I just can't deal with that insurance company anymore. They don't want to pay, they don't want to take care of us, they don't, da-da-da-da-da. Okay, sit down, let's see what I can do to help you. And so I would get involved and make the insurance company do what they promised to do. And if they didn't, if they weren't willing to do it voluntarily, I would say, okay, fine, I'll tell my story to a jury and they will spank you. So it became very gratifying work. I felt like I was able to wear the white hat, and represent the little guy against the insurance industry who don't care. You're just a claim number. Right, well, when I was in business for myself, practicing law, that's what I did. I had a staff, I had, clients that depended on me. I had to pay the overhead, I had to pay my staff. It's everything that is involved in running a business. Running the chamber is similar, but it's a nonprofit enterprise. In other words, we're not in it to make money, we're in it to provide a service. But it requires funding, of course, to do that. And so we solicit funding from sponsors and from members and so forth to try to help defray the cost of providing these services to members. That's the essential difference. It's strictly nonprofit, whereas when I was in business, I wanted to make a profit, obviously. When I was practicing law, I loved it. It was, and that's something else too, by the way, that if I haven't mentioned it, well, I guess I did at the beginning. Determine what you like to do, and then get an education in that area, and then work in that area. And so that's what I did, and that's what I would recommend all of you do. And so I loved it. I enjoyed it thoroughly. But I reached a point where I thought, I got enough money, kids are all raised, let's do something else. So that's when I kind of retired and first went to South America for a couple of years with my wife, and then did another humanitarian service thing, then came back and got involved in the chamber because I love Hispanics. Argentina, al norte, ¿habla español?
Yes.
¿Sí? ¿De dónde?
From Argentina.
¿De dónde? ¿De qué parte?
San Luis.
San Luis.
That's close to Mendoza.
Okay, sure. I was in Resistencia. Sí, al norte. So anyway, we've spent 5 years living in Latin America and love it, and so that's how I got involved with the Hispanic Chamber. And let me just, speaking of that, by the way, I just found this article yesterday, believe it or not, that says, this is the title of the article. Can you see that? The Latino American dream. Do you think the Latino American dream is any different than the American dream? Un poquito. ¿Cómo?
The origin is probably a little different. The struggle is probably a little harder,
Okay,
I imagine.
no doubt. It is.
There's more to overcome.
There is. So,
Sorry,
go ahead.
doesn't it make it better when it happens?
Absolutely. It's sweeter when it happens. But the point is, it doesn't just apply to Hispanics or Latino Americans. It applies to every ethnic group. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what your ethnicity is, or racial background. The American dream is available for everyone. It may be harder for some, and that's unfortunate in some respects, but the payoff is that much sweeter. So go for it. This is just a very interesting article. It highlights several Latinos that have come to this country from elsewhere and made it happen. They've done it and realized the American dream, just like every single one of you can. All right, just do it. Just do it. Doesn't matter. You know, I have an office with the chamber that's in a building with another organization. The secretary of that other organization happens to be from Haiti. She's a black woman, and her story is incredible. Her story is absolutely incredible. How she came from Haiti and now works for this other organization as an administrative assistant. But she talked to me the other day about racism, the kind of racism that she's experienced. And she tells her children, her boys who are in high school at this stage, you know, if someone else looks at you through a racial lens, that's their perspective, not yours. Let me say that again. If someone else looks at you through a racial lens and stereotypes you, that's on them. That's not your image. Okay? And so, no matter what the situation, no matter what the racial background or what have you, it's achievable. Certainly, yes, ma'am.
So when you were an undergrad studying political science, what initially drew you to law?
I've always been interested in the rules of the game. You know, I was an athlete growing up, and what are the rules of this game? How do I apply these rules to win the game? So I got thinking about that in terms of life. What are the rules of life that I can apply to win the game, you know, to succeed? And so I thought, okay, the rules of the game are spelled out in political science, business courses, sociology. You know, that's how you learn the rules of the game. And that's kind of what led me into political science. And then when I was taking political science courses, I took a constitutional law class. And it was about the rights of people accused of crimes, basically, criminal procedure and substantive law, vis-a-vis the government who is trying to put these people away. You know, the Constitution stands between the accused and the prosecutor to protect them. So as I studied constitutional law, to figure out how to keep the government at bay and protect these people, some of whom need more protection than others, I was hooked. Man, that's the rules of the game right there. And so I was a goner. I said, I'm going to law school. I think was just making the decision and having the confidence to do it. Because there's so much working against you. You know, where's the money going to come from? Where am I going to locate? How am I going to hire staff? Where am I going to get clients? You know, am I going to be able to handle the problems they bring to me? All these questions, you know, that come up in running a business, I faced. Right now, the Hispanic population makes up nearly, approaching 20% of the population in the state of Utah. Many, many of those folks are in business for themselves or trying to be in business for themselves. They come here, they know that the American dream is available, they're just trying to figure out how to get it. So the Chamber has been organized, Chamber of Commerce organized to help them run their business, to start a business and grow their business. So we teach principles of business management. We teach these principles that I went over early on in this class, trying to give them the confidence and the assurance that they can do it. And so we have meetings for that purpose, English and Spanish. We collaborate with other organizations that are providing services already in the community. We see how can we work together to provide these services to the Hispanic community. Not only business practices, but family practices. You know, when they come from elsewhere, how many of you have come from outside the United States? Born outside the United States, come here? Several of you. So you have some understanding of what I'm talking about. It can be difficult. And so a lot of these folks are coming here and they're just needing a leg up. And we're providing that, trying to provide that. In fact, for example, just the other day, one of the other directors and I met with the marketing manager of Real Salt Lake, you know, the professional soccer team. They have a large fan base in the Hispanic community. So we went to them and said, okay, how do we cooperate with you folks to reach your fan base and provide these services? And so we're working on that now to try to make that happen. We also provide one-on-one mentoring. People call up, say, hey, got a problem. This is our problem. How do we do this? How do I set up an LLC? You know, how do we market? So we provide one-on-one services for those folks in English and Spanish. Most Hispanic businesses are very small businesses, and that's who we cater to. They're service businesses primarily. We had we bought a new house here in Utah a few years ago with an unfinished basement. We had it finished off. Almost every single one of the subcontractors was Hispanic. Okay, that's a lot of what they do in the construction industry, service industries, food processing industries, all those kinds of things. I might say that these guys that came in and finished off our basement did an excellent job. They were fantastic workers and knew their job, but not all of them do. And so those are the ones we're trying to help. Say, okay, here's some things that you can do to improve your business practices, your success rate. It was originally founded in 2005. It was originally known as the Latin American Chamber of Commerce, and it functioned successfully for about 10 years and then just collapsed. The leadership just went away and the organization fell apart. About that time, I and some other folks came along, an aerospace engineer from Chile, for example, another agro-business woman from Mexico. The three of us kind of got together and said, hey, let's rekindle this. You know, this needs to keep going. And so Last year, 2017, we basically rebranded the organization and relaunched it and with new leadership, and that's when I became involved. So I've only been involved maybe a couple of years. But it's been a labor of love, with these folks that are just trying to realize the dream, Yes, it's going to get bigger. It's going to get, there's going to be more. One of the things that we're trying to do right now is, because there are lots of Hispanics involved in trying to run their own businesses, we're trying to help them learn how to market to the rest of the community. And at the same time, provide some guidance to the Anglo community as to how to market to Latinos. So there's some cross-cultural marketing that we were trying to do. Just a simple example of the difference in cultures, okay? Latinos are notoriously late. ¿Verdad que sí? You say 9 o'clock, that, to them that means 10 o'clock. Basically, right? But if you tell an Anglo you're going to be on the job at 9 o'clock and you don't show up till 10 o'clock, you're in trouble. Right? And so we're trying to bridge some of those cultural differences. When we were in Argentina, interestingly enough, everybody shuts down about noon. They go to work at 8 or 9 o'clock. Everybody shuts down at noon. And all afternoon, they come home and eat a light lunch. And all afternoon, they sleep.
That's true.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Except in the major metropolitan areas, But everywhere else.
Like a snack type of thing, like where you just drink tea with some pastries, and
Right.
then we take a nap, and then we go back to
Go back to work. Go back to work about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and work till 9 or 10 o'clock. Come home and have the big evening meal. Stay up till midnight, 1 o'clock, whenever, and do it again the next day. I thought, you
Even where it's not that hot.
Yeah, that's right. And it does. And if you're not working out in the campo or wherever you're working, it doesn't matter if you have this little shop. See you at noon, and they go home and sleep. Thought,
same with schools.
what's wrong with this picture?
Just saw it in Cordova.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yes, morning school, afternoon school. Right. So anyway, that's just an example of the cultural differences that you encounter, that we've encountered as a Chamber of Commerce. We're trying to help both communities recognize those differences and bridge the gap. Okay. Don't show up late. Do what you say you're going to do. I've had a friend in Argentina. He says, you Americans are different than we are. Really. He says, when we greet one another, when Latinos greet one another, it's like, kiss on each cheek, hug, and everything. When Americans greet each other, they say, "Hi, glad to meet you. See you." It's almost that abrupt, right? Sometimes, and so you gotta, we're trying to work with that. There's so much to consider in starting your own business. I mean, you've got to think of location, product or service, client base, competition, financing, staff. I mean, all those things enter in. I would say do a very thorough market analysis, first of all. Okay, and secondly, prepare a business plan. And you can go online, there's multiple forms for business plans. And what it does, the value of preparing a business plan is that it forces you to think through step by step what you're going to have to do to succeed. Okay, and those are the things that I just mentioned are just a few of them. But the bottom line is always the same, and that is it comes down to marketing. You can be the best lawyer in town, but if nobody knows you're there, nobody's going to walk in your office. You can have the best product, latest widget, but how are you going to market it? And who's going to be in competition with? Who's going to be undermining you, undercutting you? Okay, so do a market analysis, figure out what you want to provide. I better say that differently. What you want to sell. Figure out what you want to sell, whether it's a service or a product or a combination of the two, okay? And then check out where your market. And are you going to be able to market that within your designated area? Another, of course, option nowadays is online. You know, there's all kinds of internet businesses popping up, and some are successful, most are not. So, but the business plan, in addition to a market analysis, is crucial. So, walk you through those steps, and you know, think about each one. We talk about that as a board of directors all the time. You know, where are we going with this? What do we want to achieve? And for me, I can't speak for everybody else, but for me, the goal ultimately is to see the Hispanic business community flourish. And that happens one business at a time. It's not all going to happen at once, you know, and not everybody is going to achieve success. But that's my goal, is to see the Hispanic business community flourish as a community and really rise up and take their place and achieve the American dream. You know, have the big house if that's what they want. You know, whatever it is, whatever success means in their mind, I'll clear away the roadblocks and help them achieve that. So, yes.
Have you gotten any conflict, or have you got any like product or any work that have you like rejected just because by helping this person? Like you mentioned in like racist, like you helping others, did that cause you any issue or conflict?
You mean, do other people object because we're so devoted to the Hispanic community, promoting minority, whatever? No, I haven't encountered that. In fact, about the largest and most powerful chamber of commerce in Salt Lake is the Salt Lake Chamber of Commerce. Been around for 100 years. They are very well connected and very wealthy. They've got, I mean, they are the Chamber of Commerce in this area, the Big Daddy. They are very supportive of us and what we're trying to do. And that's been my experience with almost everybody else. I haven't had anybody say, oh, you know, tell them to go home. There's been none of that kind of thing. So it's very positive, especially here in Utah, it seems. I know people that come to Utah just because it's Utah. You know, you look around and this place is a boom town. It's not like that everywhere, but it is here. I think I mentioned early on that when I was in college, I took a couple of years off and to provide community service, humanitarian service. Where I went was South Texas. Actually, it started before that. I spent some time growing up in Southern California. And some of my best friends were minorities. For whatever it's worth, one of my best friends was Bobby Bonds, Barry Bonds' father. A name you might know. But then when I went to South Texas as an Anglo, learning Spanish, speaking Spanish, I spent all my time in the Hispanic community. And that was the first place, one of the earliest experiences I had with racism. Racism between the Anglo community and the Hispanic community in South Texas. And it just made my blood boil. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to do everything I can to prevent that. And so as the years passed, I became more and more devoted to that principle. And in my law practice, anytime I came across a Hispanic in need, I was there. But my wife and I have lived in Latin America for 5 years. We lived in Panama for 3 years, in Argentina for 2 years, and so we love the culture, we love the people, we love the language, the food, you name it. And so getting involved in the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce was just a natural for me. I just...
Appreciate you talking.